Welcome you all to NFYI's first joint congressional town hall of 2021. This is our second congressional town hall with Representatives Jackie Walorski and Danny K. Davis. We are honored to have them back. I don't want to take up too much time today because I want to let the members actually speak to their wonderful accomplishments and achievements over the past congressional session. So without further ado, I'm going to begin here the presentation. Thank you all for joining us. I expect this to be a fantastic discussion. Just a little recap for today. So we're going to go over just a quick 2-minute review of the legislation we'll be talking about. We'll go over some community agreements and strategic sharing for sharing, having a shared space with current and former foster youth. And then we'll kick off the town hall with recently one of NFYI's newest recently hired interns, Charity. So without further ado, let's get this legislative recap. And again, this is just 30,000-foot view. We have two wonderful members of Congress who authored the bill themselves, who will be here to speak to the legislation. So just a quick recap. Last year on December 27th, former President Trump signed into legislation the Supporting Foster Youth and Families Through the Pandemic Act as part of that big omnibus bill that included the $600 stimulus check. So if you remember that, this bill was included in that. What's important about this bill? One, it's legislation. Legislation means it's been codified into law, juxtaposed to an executive action. And then two, you had 56 co-sponsors on this bill, so nice bipartisan support through and through. Second, we happen to increase Chafee with this bill by over $400 million. As you know, Chafee is flexible funds that can go to a lot of the priorities of our current and former foster youth, including education and housing. Additionally, they allowed for the reentry into foster care for anyone who may have opted out before the pandemic, and they prevented aging out during the pandemic as well. It extended Chafee services throughout the duration of the national emergency. It increased ETV vouchers. Those are those education and training vouchers you may have received if you're a college student, from $5,000 to $12,000 and so much more. I'm really just tip of the iceberg here. And really what we want to emphasize today is the bill is passed. Enough of the information. What are our next steps? So we want to be talking about the 3 big things you can do locally to make sure that your state takes maximum advantage of this bill. First and foremost is flexibility. There are provisions in this bill and flexibility permitted in this bill that wasn't previously a part of the child welfare picture. So when we're talking about everything from healthcare to technology to transportation. So one, we need to educate our state officials about the flexibility in the bill. Second, we want to talk about how the provisions under Family First are 100% funded. A lot of times the reimbursement rate is at 25% through 75%. Now states can take advantage of fully funded federal programs for current and former foster youth. And last, but certainly not least, this funding is temporary, which means we need to work with our states and hit the ground running to make sure that they know that this funding is on the table and it needs to be spent before the end of the current fiscal year. So without further ado, I want to toss this. I'm going to go ahead and close this screen sharing. I want to offer an opportunity to our NFYI Los Angeles intern, Miss Charity, to introduce our members today. Charity, would you like to take it away?
Of course. Thank you for the introduction, Kenneth. My name is Charity Lingen, and I'm a new intern at NFYI. I'm excited to organize and mobilize alongside all of you. So before I begin, thank you to Representatives Walorski and Davis for making the time to be here with everyone today. This is your second time back with NFYI as a dynamic set of trailblazers, and we are honored to have you. The first time you were here, we spoke and you listened. You took our feedback and you fought tooth and nail to ensure the nation's foster youth were not lost as we navigate the increasingly dire impacts of this pandemic. Now, your bill, the Supporting Foster Youth and Families Through the Pandemic Act, is a law. We are excited to hear from both of you, and I know based on the last town hall that everyone will walk away feeling encouraged by your visionary leadership. Your tireless efforts to sponsor one of the largest child welfare bills in recent history makes you both allies and partners in this fight for transformation in the child welfare system. But your heartfelt dedication to the well-being of foster youth like myself makes both of you child welfare champions. So without further ado, I would like to introduce the Honorable Representative Walorski of Indiana and Representative Davis of Illinois. Thank you.
And for our representatives, feel free to unmute yourself. I know I see you guys getting all set. That's the Zoom world, but feel free to kick us off.
I thank Representative Walorski for joining with me to develop this legislation. And I also thank you for the opportunity to talk with you today about our bipartisan bill to support foster youth and families through the pandemic. I have to begin by applauding all of the foster youth, all of you, who used your voices to tell policymakers what you needed. You should be proud because through your advocacy, we secured $400 million for older youth via Chafee supports. This was a big win to meet the tremendous need experienced by current and former foster youth. I'm also grateful for having such a wonderful partner in this win in Ranking Member Jackie Walorski. It was a wonderful collaboration where we called everyone we could think of and everyone that we knew to make it happen. When we look at the law, aging out is one part. A critical piece of the bill is the prohibition on youth aging out of care during the pandemic. We heard your voices loud and clear that you needed this protection. Youth age 22 or younger must have the option to voluntarily re-enter care if they aged out in fiscal year 20 or FY21, which is from October 1st, 2019 through October 1st, 2021. And of course, there's money for supports. The cornerstone of the bill is $350 million for general supports for youth to pay for housing, driving related expenses, transportation, and other necessities. Plus, there is a $50 million specifically for the education and training vouchers for tuition, room and board. These funds have to be spent by October the 1st of 2021. You don't want money sitting around in states and not being used. We listened, and again, we heard you. For the ETV vouchers, we increased the maximum award from $5,000 a year to $12,000. In addition, this increase is good all through way until October the 1st, 2022. Typically, Chafee only serves youth up to age 21 or 23, depending on a state's emancipation age. During the pandemic, states can serve youth up through age 26. Typically, youth must be working or in school. We waived that during the pandemic. Typically, states can only help youth with up to 30% of housing costs. We removed the limit. Typically, Chafee doesn't cover food. During the pandemic, non-perishable food can be covered. Almost all of these improvements end on October the 1st, 2021. Importantly, Chafee provided direct supports, not cash aid. This is important because it protects you from having the funds count against government supports like food stamps or TANF. The ETV vouchers are cash and those funds are protected so that they will not count as income when applying for other government help. What can you do? Importantly, given that states likely can't meet all the needs of all foster youth, states can prioritize the Chafee funds for certain uses or certain groups of youth. We're waiting for the Health and Human Services Department to issue final guidance on how to spend the money. So right now you can contact your state Chafee independent living coordinator to tell them how you need help. They are waiting to listen and will hear you. I look forward to your questions and thank you again.
Thank you, Congressman Davis, for those enlightening words. I want to go ahead and pass it over to Representative Walorski for any opening words she may have.
Yeah, so this is Martin Schultz with Congresswoman Jackie Walorski's office. Sorry, the Congresswoman hasn't been able to get on yet. She's stuck on the House floor. She's ranking member of the Ethics Committee, so she's overseeing debate on the bill. But I do want to share some comments from her. Hopefully, maybe she can get back here before the town hall's over and share some comments for herself as well. But yeah, just sharing kind of the same sentiments of Mr. Davis. Thank you guys all for your work on this. I know she really supported kind of having that backup when we were trying to get co-sponsors and those kinds of things to get this moved across the finish line. So she really appreciates that. She really loves working with Chairman Davis on these things and hopes to continue that work into this Congress. So no, really appreciate it. Thank you guys.
Thank you so much, Martin. And for everybody on the call, know that Martin is the brains behind it all. He's the navigator and the Congress member is the pilot, but he makes sure everything runs smooth here. So he knows all about this and he helped set this up. So thank you so much for your words, Martin. We do have some lined up Q&A. I want to go ahead and turn over the Q&A, but before I do, I just want to, just a quick flash reminder of what Brittany said. Remember to choose, connect, and claim if we do ask questions. We also have some questions that have been submitted in advance, so we'll run through those first, and then we'll open the floor to additional youth. We have identified 2 young folks and a service provider who will be asking our questions, the pre-selected questions. So first, we'll open it up to Nick Marshall of Indiana. Nick is a tireless and fearless youth advocate who has recently joined NFYI and began attending our event. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Nick to ask his question.
Thank you for having me. I'm Nicholas Marshall, grew up in foster care since I was an infant, in and out of the arms of my mother's arms. We fought vigorously to do things and help things. If it wasn't for 2 wonderful foster parents, I wouldn't be the person I am today. I'm the first to graduate from my family 4-year college at the University of Louisville, and it is strong and proud to sit here before you today, before you two. And I have a question, and it was kind of edged towards the Indiana part, but how will the funds for Chafee and the 400 million be used in the state of Indiana to help kids in care?
Yeah, so the funds haven't gone out to the states yet, and right now I think the best action is those will be determined by kind of the governor's office and those folks at the state level. So yeah, we're not completely sure exactly how the funds will be spent as they go into each state. Each state obviously operates a little differently. But it's one of those things that HHS needs to issue guidance, send out the funds to the states, and then the states develop a plan from there. I know Andy's on the line from Ways and Means, our office. I don't know if he has anything else to add on that. Well, maybe Andy's not on the line, so.
No worries, Martin. We appreciate it. Which you may have heard it was a slight slip, but we said that Family First covers 100% reimbursement. So what we'll see if Indiana is opted into Family First is they will cover 100% reimbursement. So what we want to do is make sure first that our state is opted in so that they can really maximize and utilize these funds to their fullest potential. So that's our first fight. But then you also want to make sure that as the bill is being implemented, that folks are aware, your state representatives, your DCFS office, local and state are aware of the flexibility they do have with these funds. Our second question today was submitted by Tony Parsons of Michigan, currently in Washington, D.C., being a superpower advocate and is part of every child welfare organization and is everywhere. I don't know how he manages his time, but I'll go ahead and toss it over to Tony. Joseph, I do see your question. I will catch you after our next speaker.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Kenny. You're too kind. I don't know how you do it. You're everywhere too. Congressman Davis, thank you. First of all, thank you for hanging out with us today and for listening to us, throughout all of 2020. So my question is, since there's so many things within the legislation and states are kind of just overwhelmed with like what to do, I guess my question is like, what was the intent behind that $400 million? Was it to do like cash transfers to young people because like we missed the stimulus? Like, what was your intent when you and Congresswoman Walorski got together and graciously wrote this bill for us?
To provide substantial support to young people, to youth, to those who are infected, to those who need the assistance, and those who need the help. And so it's primarily designed to be of direct assistance to young people. It's not cash, but it's used to pay for services. And so services can be just as good as cash.
Thank you so much, Congressman. So our last question that was pre-submitted. Daniel, I see you have your hand raised. I'll come to you after Joseph. Joseph, you'll come right after our next caller from Rhode Island, Ms. Cara Foley.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for hosting this tonight. We're really excited about this opportunity in Rhode Island. So my question is mostly about plans for the future. So this funding has alleviated or will alleviate some of the barriers that our young people in Rhode Island and other jurisdictions are facing and have been facing for quite some time. So I'm curious to know about any plans for data collection and analysis and how that may inform advocacy going forward for future funding streams at the federal level.
We really want the money to get out to the users, to those states and programs and individuals who have direct interaction and direct contact with the young people in need. And so it's really designed to get out to them, to distribute and make use of it for the benefit of our youth who are in need.
Thank you so much, Congressman. And I just want to flag, we also have some staff on the call. So staff from Representative Walorski's office or from any of the congressional support offices, feel free to chime in as well. I'll go ahead and turn it over to our next question from Joseph.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Joseph. My question is, how do we approach more governors and state representatives about the benefits of the bill? Would it be appropriate to work with your office to do a joint town hall with the governors or child welfare agencies in your state? And how would you recommend we begin?
Living coordinators would be the best source, but of course, we want to have as many entities involved in the process as possible. So working with governor's offices, with program associates, with program operators, all of that can be and should be a part of the interaction to get the most input and to have the highest level of awareness in terms of what youth really need and how to make sure that they get it.
Thank
And
you.
is there any staff who would like to chime in on that? Go ahead. I see you, Andrew. Go ahead.
Great question. I know that Representative Walorski spent her some time as a state legislature. And if she were on this call, what she would obviously want to emphasize is they're going through the budgeting process right now in some of your states, depending where you're at. In Texas, it could be a 2-year process. In other states, it's a 1-year process. But with the state budgeting process coming up, it's a great time to get in your state legislatures, your state senators, and your governor's ear to put a flag out there and remind them that this is a top priority. And now is not, you know, especially with the federal assistance coming in, that they need to plan accordingly, to act quickly, and then so that we can continue to build here to make sure that our foster youth are taken care of. I think that's what Ms. Walorski would say.
Thank you so much, Andrew. And I know we have some service providers. Before we go to you, Daniel, really quickly, I want to offer up an opportunity to talk about the real need to opt into Family First. I see some of our folks put some helpful links so you can identify to see if your state is opted in or not. But I will turn the floor to my partners across the nation. There are a few of you, you know who you are, on the call. Feel free to unmute yourself and just so we can emphasize the point of Family First and opting in with getting your state to opt in.
Hey, Kenneth, this is Jenny from Juvenile Law Center. What I was trying to clarify is that the opting in to Family First is kind of separate and apart from the increased Chafee allocation, that's something that all states will get. But yes, absolutely, in terms of the Family First provisions, I just wanted to, that was the clarity I was trying to provide. And I think Stephen and others were clarifying, because I don't want people to think that only the states that have approved plans would get the Chafee increase. It's all states, and that's what we want people to start planning for.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And then I see Daniel has his hand up. Feel free, if folks have a question, feel free to raise your virtual hand. And then I will toss it to Daniel, and then we'll pass it, we'll continue from there. So Daniel, thank you so much.
Hi there. I'm sorry, I'm a millennial multitasker, so I'm sorry I can't have my video on, but 1 second. Okay. So my question would be, how can we work with your offices to draft a letter to the HS so that they could develop the best guidelines for the implementation of your bill? We had a Youth Voices that sponsored this legislation, and we know it will be as beneficial to include youth voices during its implementation as well.
All right, it was a little choppy, but it sounded like Daniel was asking, how can we ensure a conversation happens between foster youth and HHS? Because foster youth were so pivotal in talking to you all as you all were sponsoring and championing this bill, how can we ensure that foster youth voice is included during its implementation?
HHS is already talking and working and is open and always listening and looking, and will be receptive to any and all information that comes to them from foster youth. Also, individuals, that is, programs and individuals can get together themselves, they can brainstorm, come up with thoughts and ideas, and then convey those ideas to program implementers. And of course, they can always continue to feed into the legislative processes, and that is to provide information to us in our office, to Representative Walorski, other members of Congress. So the avenues are open and the receptivity is there and great. And we look forward, quite frankly, to receiving all of the information and all of the input. The good thing about problem solving and the good thing about meeting needs is you never know whether or not an idea or a thought that you've got is going to be acceptable and instrumental in moving unless it's shared and sent out and presented and given. And in all likelihood, it will be made use of. States will have the money and will start using it just as quickly as they can get it.
Thank you so much, Congressmember. Nick, I do see your hand up. Before I turn it over to you, I do want to offer staff of Representative Walorski or the congressional support staff to chime in.
Yeah, I mean, I think Chairman Davis, summed it up pretty well. Yeah, I know HHS is working pretty hard and quickly to get this guidance done. I think there might be some movement by the end of this month, but obviously we're still trying to work with the agency bipartisanly on that.
Thank you so much. And just, I'll do a quick shameless plug. We have a town hall follow-up on Monday. So if you're interested, we can help you either draft a letter, write an email. We'll help you identify the right people at the Children's Bureau and HHS to make sure that your comments are received. All right, and with that, I'll go ahead and toss it back to Nick. Welcome back, Nick.
Thank you very much.
Let me just take a moment and talk a little bit about stimulus checks. I've heard from many former foster youth that they did not get either one of the 2 stimulus checks last year because in some instances, former guardians claimed them as a dependent, and therefore they ended up not getting anything. But if you did not get any stimulus check last year, you likely will be able to get it by filing your 2020 income taxes. There will not be a non-filers portal during the tax season this spring, so you'll need to file on a Form 1040. You can file for free using the IRS free file software, or you can go to one of those free feeder sites. I'm working on a flyer to help foster youth understand tax resources. And if a parent claimed you before, they may claim you again. If so, your return will be reviewed and you can use the taxpayer advocate for help. You will need some evidence that you were independent for most of 2020. You can also check with your member of Congress for help. And when you ask for help from us, we connect you with the taxpayer advocate. And if it's at all possible, please set up an actual bank account for a direct deposit of your refund. This is very important because if Congress enacts additional checks this year, the Internal Revenue Service would automatically put that money in your account and you wouldn't need to reapply for it. In Chicago, we've worked with various banks to help people who may not typically have a bank account. So there are some tax preparation places that will offer you cash on hand, and they will take your refund via a temporary bank account. If you do this, you will not get any future checks automatically. So dealing with the bank is best. And if you really need help, go to a taxpayer advocate or go to some entity, organization, or agency that is established especially to do this.
Thank you so much, Congressman. And thank you for remembering that Congressmember Danny Davis brings this up from his first town hall we had way back in April of 2020 when this issue first arose. So we thank you for your diligent follow-up and your work on the committee to make sure that this problem was addressed. I will now turn it, unless Representative Walorski's office had a comment about the tax situation, because I know that your office worked diligently as well. If not, I'll toss it over to Nick, no worries.
Yeah, no, yeah, yeah, he summed it up perfectly. The only thing I will know on the taxpayer advocate side, I mean, some of this stuff is going to take a little longer than normal because, I mean, in Indiana, there's only 12 taxpayer advocates, and right now they are just absolutely overwhelmed with kind of taxpayer issues. So I just want to give that little hint out there that, yeah, should you go through taxpayer advocate, it might take a little longer than it normally would.
Thank you so much, Martin. And with that, now we can come on in, Nick Marshall.
Thank you very much again. I have a follow-up question, Representative Davis. You said that in October, the funds will be no longer available. With that, we know that this COVID-19 situation could last for a while. How are we going to reevaluate those funds in October? And then also, what are we doing the steps to help youth in care, maybe years to come?
We are discussing it, and not only are we discussing it, but we are very fortunate, I must say, that we have Health and Human Services now, and we actually have a White House that is very interested in this issue, very interested in child welfare issues, period. And so no matter how long, and we hope it won't be too long. I mean, right now, there is serious distribution of vaccines. People are learning to practice the public health protocols. And so we've got our fingers crossed that we will be able to arrest the pandemic. No time certain, but that it will not go on forever.
Our work, remember, our work from the previous session on all the work we did last year is not done. We have the executive order from President Trump around MIPA and IEPA and making sure that youth have safe placement. So there's still work to follow up from the previous administration into this administration. So the work is nonstop. We just have helpful folks all around the nation. So what I'm going to do now, if we have no more questions from our youth, I know we have some amazing service providers who I partner with almost every day and have done even more so over the past year since we've all been on Zoom. If there's any questions from our service providers, or if you want to speak to our youth and offer any points of clarification about your experience on where they should start, I'm going to open the floor now. And if there are no service providers, okay, seeing none, I will turn it over. I just want to remind everybody about some next steps. I know we're closing kind of early. Martin or Andrew, is there any update with Representative Walorski? I know she's chairing a committee, so no worries at all. I just want to make sure that she has an opportunity to speak before we close.
Martin, on the precise latest details of Representative Walorski's availability here. I know that she was on the floor as of moments ago, and they were just called to vote.
Okay.
Do you have any update?
Representative Walorski is out changing the world, as she should be doing. And so that's where we're at right now. So I'll go ahead. I want to offer Representative Davis and his staff, and also the congressional support staff on the call today, an opportunity to close. Thank you so much. Again, my shameless plug, you'll hear from me. You'll get a follow-up email with Monday's webinar. This is a webinar for the folks who are ready to take those next steps. Let's get those letters drafted and get our thoughts conveyed. And then that's all from me. I'll go ahead and turn it over to our staff and our Congress members for closing remarks.
Actually, the vote has just been called, and so Representative Walorski is very much engaged in that. And of course, the primary responsibility that we all have is to vote. After all is said and done, voting is the bottom line and is the way in which you know that you're there. So I'm certain that that's where she is and that's what she's doing. And we want to thank her, though, for the collaboration. We had a conversation earlier today, and it is just great. We are both seriously optimistic that we're going to be able to continue not just the dialogue, but we're going to be able to develop progressive ideas into legislation and make those available. So we want to thank you all for the opportunity to chat with you this afternoon, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you so much, Chairman Davis, and let Representative Walorski and her staff is on the call. You know, we are always happy to have you both back together, individual, with other members. We love having and sharing this space with you all. So with that, if that's all, thank you so much. And I